All right, folks, welcome back to Mike and Maurice's Mind Escape. We have episode number 97 today, Ancient Mysteries with the Brothers of the Serpent. We're going to do a little bit of a swap cast here. You can check us out at patreon.com/Mike and Maurice. For $2 a month, you will get some exclusive content, videos, and audio. Also, check us out at mikeandmauricemindescape.com. And we'll have the Brothers of the Serpent information down below the video as well. So what's going on, guys? How are you?
Okay, doing good. Glad to be here.
Yeah.
Good to have you guys on. Yeah. Been listening to your podcast for, you guys have what, been around for a year, a little bit over a year?
Yeah, a couple years. Yep.
Couple years. Yeah, we're approaching, I think, a couple years as well now, too. I think this winter it'll be 2 years.
Oh, nice. Good job. Yeah, it seems like we're pretty close in episode numbers. So, do you guys do one a week or?
It depends. We've done one a week. We've done 4 a week.
Oh,
we've done skipped a couple weeks.
We get guests. We indulge in that. So
yeah.
Depends if we can get people or not. But yeah, we try and do one a week.
We try and do at least one a week. Sometimes lately we've been trying to do 2 a week, usually Tuesdays and Thursdays. But it just really depends on guest schedules and if we're going to do one just the two of us or what the case may be.
Yeah. So, okay. So I know this is Swapcast, so I get to ask you guys questions too.
Sure.
So because Kyle and I actually focus a lot on just us. Like, we're not a very guest heavy show. We do get guests, but for the most part,
some of your shows with the guests, like the Randall Carlson ones. And
right.
I think you've had Brian Keating on, maybe, is that?
Yeah, which we got after I heard him on your podcast. I was like, wow. Yeah.
He's a good dude. So I've heard some of yours that we've had some similar guests on, but it was a different podcast too, which I like hearing, Yeah.
So I was going to ask, like, when it's just you, what topics do you usually discuss? Do you have a theme that you stay with, or?
That depends.
We've been doing those slideshows lately.
Yeah, when it's just the two of us. So lately I'm going to systematically go through different time periods through the ancient world. Right now, we're just going to start with ancient Greece, just because I've been reading a lot of philosophy stuff, all of Plato's stuff, looking into Pythagoras, all that kind of stuff. So, and then we're going to move on to the Sophists, and then we'll go to the megalithic structures of Greece and kind of go through that. And I hope to do that with ancient Rome, ancient Egypt, ancient, Acadia, Sumer.
So yeah, that we just we try and go through all the timelines systematically, but for each ancient civilization, we didn't start from the earliest, or let's say ideally we would have started with Göbekli Tepe and or hunter-gatherers and worked our way up to the most modern of ancient civilizations. But I just kind of got into Greek philosophy and pre-Socratic philosophy and just been looking into all that stuff. So we started there, and we're going to start working our way through all that stuff.
What subjects do you guys concentrate on? You said that when you're together, you try and do some of the same themes.
Yeah, so we're mostly ancient mysteries, and we focus a lot. Kyle and I are both builders, and we have builders and engineers in our family, and builders and engineers as friends. So that's how we look at a lot. We're looking at ancient civilizations through one of the only things left to us to look at, in some cases, which is their structures, right? So a lot of cases there are written word, but for instance, with Sumer, it's difficult because the translations are so wonky. Mm-hmm. And even with Egypt, you can read the translation by 4 or 5 different guys of the same text, and it's so different
right
across those translations that they almost have no worth. So we look at them through their structures and the mysteries of how some of these places were built and what was actually in their minds when they were doing it and why were they doing it. So we look at that a lot. Other mysteries too. We go through a lot of the mythology. We're very interested in comparative mythology, like think of Hamlet's Mill kind of thing. Like, why are all these myths carrying the same themes from cultures that are separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years in some cases? So there's something deeper going on here, and that's one of the main things we explore on our podcast. So
yeah, I mean, if I had to categorize it just from what I've listened to, I'd say you guys are definitely geology, building of ancient structures, heavy ancient civilization stuff. I think we focus on more of consciousness and the mind and what goes into that, and a lot of the surrounding subjects like psychedelics, near-death experiences, lucid dreaming, different offshoots of that one main topic. I mean, we did start down the road, like Maurice was saying, we did start off just doing ancient civilization stuff and some UFO stuff, but I don't know, it just, going into the show, I didn't want to have one specific theme, because there's a lot of shows that just have one theme and a lot of them do well, but my inspiration for even doing this was listening to Joe Rogan, because I would listen I like all of his episodes, or most of them, comedy, and he has all the top, he had John Anthony West and Robert Schock and all those guys on, so I wanted to do a show where it was almost like all people like that, so I started reading all the books of all these people and just try to get as many of those types of people on the show as possible, because that's the subject that really interests me.
Yeah.
And you guys have done a great job with your guests. Like, I remember back shortly after we had started the podcast and I found you guys, like, I was like, man, y'all got Laird Scranton on and all this stuff. You guys were just pulling them one after the other. I was like, that's awesome. We had spent probably like the first year with like few guests, or I should say like 30 episodes in with just us talking about stuff.
Right.
And that's all Michael, man. He reached out and he got a hold of some publishing company, and we kind of, isn't that what happened?
Well, that, and just I started emailing people, and some people didn't want to do it, or like, come back to us when you have 100,000 followers or whatever,
Right.
So and that's
we'll
fine.
Talk soon.
I get that, but we've gotten some people that I've read books of these people where I found them interesting, even before we started doing this. So I started reaching out to those people, and if you leave like an extra touch of like, hey, I'm a fan, I read this book, and you make it known that you know what you're talking about, they're more apt to come on and discuss things.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, that episode y'all did with Laird Scranton was fascinating to me. I mean,
he's
followed
a smart dude. Yeah.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, it was just a really good interview. So
well, thanks.
Yeah, a lot of these interviews, I come in with a fresh slate. Like, Michael will read the books and stuff, and then I come in, I don't really know all that much, and it's like a massive learning session for me. It's pretty sweet.
yeah.
Yep.
So you appeal to both types of audiences, the ones who have already done the deep dive and the ones that don't know anything about it.
Yeah, numbskulls, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's me telling him things will explain. And we figured this out as we were going along. Like, me explaining things to him explains things to the audience that don't know. Like, obviously you'll have your advanced people that in these set topics that have read all the books and understand all the research and everything like that. So to those
But
people,
a lot of people haven't, That's just the way it is.
It just depends on who's listening. But for the most part, I mean, we've gotten a good response. Of course, there's trolls and nasty people out there, but I think that if you're being honest and you're not really trying to sell something in particular, like you're not trying to push an agenda or anything like that, you're just curious and want to learn, I think people respond to that better as a listener than having one specific thing and making it a point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so what do you guys, I mean, it's hard to answer a question like, what do you think about ancient civilization? But what do you think about some of these mysteries? Like, what do you guys think about when you're looking at these some of these anomalous structures like Baalbek or, of course, the pyramids or Sacsayhuaman in Peru? Like, what do you guys think about with that stuff?
I think the weird thing to me still is obviously ancient Egypt, the pyramids. Not that we know humans built them, but how did they build them?
Right.
So to me, that one's still one of the greater ones in terms of there's so many different theories on how it happened. They think they have a good idea, but that's flip-flop back and forth over time. Baalbek's weird. They obviously chiseled those out. I kind of look at those like an obelisk, though, like, because people question how could they have gotten the obelisk out of the ground. Well, they had, diorite or dolomite blocks, and they would pound them out like stones like that. They have the mark still of the one that's still stuck in the ground, and then they would polish them off. So I look at which Baalbek, similar to that, and I think that that's probably along the lines of what was going on there, in my opinion. But I mean, those are so heavy; it's impossible to really know. Yeah, I think that some of those, the heaviest stone ones, are the ones that are anomalous to me, because even the pyramid, the blocks are what, like 1 to 2 tons, something like that.
Yeah, on average, yeah. There are ones that are very heavy and that are the granite blocks of the King's Chamber. Or the interior chambers are very heavy blocks usually, but yeah, the what makes up the core of the structure, the limestone, is usually 1 to 2 tons on average.
So I mean, that's heavy, but that's nothing like 100 tons or 1,000 tons. So I mean, and then at Baalbek, didn't they find another one that's some underneath the stone of the pregnant woman or something? Is that what it's called? So there's one underneath it that they found as well that's even bigger than that. They haven't really excavated it completely, but it's a lot bigger.
Yeah, 1,680 tons by estimate. That's
crazy.
Damn ridiculous.
So I mean, to answer
who was planning to move that?
To answer your question, I believe that humans did all this stuff. I mean, if you look at the ones in Peru, Sacsayhuaman and Pumu Punku and all those ones, I think it's impressive, but I think humans did it.
Yeah.
How long ago? I think that's the thing that's up for debate, and that's why people like Graham Hancock, Robert Schoch, all those guys are popular, especially right now, is because it's definitely coming out as more and more things. Even people that don't pay attention to it. Our cousin Rob, who just got into this kind of stuff, is like, oh, did you see this interview, or did you see that they just found these bones of this proving that the Denisovans were over here and this and that? And I'm like, yeah, that's why I think Graham Hancock's ahead of the curve a little bit, so.
Yep. Yeah, and I think so with us, it's never a question of did humans do it. We're not talking about aliens or anything like that.
But what I meant by that was just that how old though? Are we talking? Because some people even think that 30,000 years ago, which I mean, I guess anything's possible, but I would bet against that timeline.
Well, anatomically modern humans have been around for at least 200,000 years. So
right. Well, that's the question: is when did the building commence? When did we start doing all this stuff? What was the inspiration, and was there some Younger Dryas impact for sure that wiped most of the planet out? Who knows?
Yeah, there have been bottlenecks in the population. We know that for sure too. That's been demonstrated pretty well scientifically, and the Younger Dryas was probably one of them. Not as big of a bottleneck as some earlier ones that took us down to
Lake Toba, that volcanic eruption in Indonesia that they said they wiped out everybody except for 5,000 to 10,000 people or something.
Yeah, and Randall and other people like him ask, was that volcanic eruption the cause or a result of something else?
So he thinks that there might have even been an impact then,
or something. Yeah, something else, because the volcanic, enormous volcanic eruptions like that are usually preceded by something else. Like there's something that causes that kind of instability.
Could have been some radical plate shifting to something like that.
Exactly. You get enormous cracks in the crust that results in outpouring. Almost, it's not really a volcano; it's outpouring of magma from beneath the crust. You know, so it causes the traps they call the big basalt plates that are in some cases 40 meters thick and cover 2/3 of the United States or whatever. There are just these huge pouring out of basaltic lavas and you're like, okay, where did this come from? What caused this to start? And yes, it kills everything, but was that the actual cause of all the deaths, or was this just part of what was going on, a bigger picture, basically?
Right.
Yeah.
So, I think we're on the same page I listened to your show, like I said before, too. So I think we're on the same page in terms of what's going on with all these ancient civilizations. But to point out, I want to go back. We were talking about our shows. I wanted to mention about your show. The thing I like about your show that I also like about other podcasts that I listen to is that you guys have little segments that you do. You do a little bit of news. You do.
Oh, yeah.
You have your own little subjects and little categories of things that you do, and I like that. I think that's a good way to build
It's a well
audience.
put together show.
It's well put together. It's organized, and usually the shows I listen to, they have different little segments. Like I like Tiger Belly, which is Bobby Lee's comedy podcast, and they've got like little different things that they do. So I think it's the that's what I like listening to. So I think you guys did a good job heading down that road, and I know it's natural too because those are just things you were interested in too. So that's good.
Yeah, and
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And the segment thing, actually, there's a funny story with that. So we do this. We call it the Tangent Cube. It's a 10-foot by 10-foot shed, pre-built.
Mhm.
You know, you go to Home Depot and you're like, I want that 10 by 10 shed, and they deliver it to your house and set it up for you. You know, wherever you want. So that's what we're doing. We build a studio in here. And when we first started doing the podcast, we got an air conditioning unit that's up on the wall. But when we first started it, it was just a window unit that we had sort of mounted in there. It was enormously loud. So we couldn't have it running while we were recording because it was just in the background, you know. So we had to take a break
here.
Yeah, we had to take a break every 30 minutes to turn the thing on and cool it back down in here before we keep going, because otherwise you're sweating like crazy.
Oh, I
So
see.
that was one of the origins of the 30-minute segments that we do. They give us time to cool everything off, and you know.
Yeah, and then we ended up thinking, like, actually, this works really well because we have a tendency to go off on tangents.
Yeah, that's why it's Tangent Cube.
Yeah, and so we take that 30-minute break, and then we were like, well, where are we going with this? And we'll have a little inside baseball talk. You know, and it's like, okay, yeah, that's what we should talk about.
Yeah.
So we come back on, and then we're reoriented.
Yep.
And so that ended up like helping to organize the shows, and then of course, all of this, like within the segments organization, like the news parts and stuff in the beginning, that just sort of came about organically.
Yeah, that evolved over time.
Oh, I like that. That's good
That's
stuff.
sweet. Yeah, that's like just embracing problems and mistakes and making it, work for you. I like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's exactly right.
So also, so my question though was, in you guys, where was the inspiration for the Brothers of the Serpent name and like the logo? I know that logo is obviously the snake eating its own tail. One of my other buddies uses it for something else that he does. He runs another website called Tail Eaters, but
great.
Whatever. It's different colors and stuff.
I mean that name is awesome. I'm just saying.
Right,
Yeah.
There's no metaphor here.
But my question is, like, what was the inspiration behind that?
Okay, so have you read? There's a book called Gods of Eden by William Bramley.
Yeah, I've read it. I think I've got the PDF on my phone.
Yeah, so he talks about the Brotherhood of the Serpent in that book and this is something that's referenced elsewhere too, but that was sort of the inspiration for it, is that the Brotherhood of the Serpent is and Graham talks about, he doesn't name them, but Graham Hancock talks about a monastic order whose job it has been to carry forward advanced information throughout the ages and across cataclysms and then re-inject them into civilization, right? Mm-hmm. So Bramley calls that the Brotherhood of the Serpent, and the serpent being an ancient reference to knowledge. Okay, so it's a symbol of knowledge, and of course the Ouroboros is an alchemist symbol. Randall talks about this quite a bit, but if you see the Ouroboros somewhere on some structure, they're telling you, okay, there's hermetic knowledge or whatever. Yes, hermetic wisdom encoded into the symbols in this building or in this structure or in this painting or whatever. Okay, so all of the symbology and the name all come back to that. Is what we're trying to do, is carry forward the work and try to understand what's happening with history, and sort of perpetuate the truth, which was the job of the Brotherhood. They don't always, so they don't always do it right. And Bramley gets the idea in his book that they seem to have been corrupted, but there are still positive elements within the Brotherhood today. The way he talks about it, he calls it the Brotherhood. Whoever this secret cabal is that's going around in the background, doing things like causing wars and making destruction happen. But that's because it was corrupted way back in the past, way back in the past. And now it's kind of split into two factions. There are the brothers that are the original Brotherhood that are still trying to do what they were supposed to do, and then there's the other part of it that have now basically gone to the dark side. So
that's a pretty sweet name, and I like the background story. That was a good pull, and I've seen some weird shit though, having to do with the serpent. A couple times in meditation, a couple times during psilocybin experiences, I've seen this multicolored, rainbowish serpent kind of just swirling around doing some stuff. So I think that there's something obviously to it. There's a reason why you see hieroglyphs and ancient, cave drawings and different things that have serpents, and it's obviously a fascination and symbology wise for fertility and different things. So yeah, that's pretty sweet.
There's also the tendency throughout mythology for civilizer gods, quote unquote civilizer, quote unquote gods, to be named in some way or another after the serpent. So Quetzalcoatl was the feathered serpent.
Yeah, I was just going to say that.
He shows up and does what? He teaches them how to have civilization. Same thing with Viracocha in South America. Viracocha is all throughout their most ancient myths.
Right.
And he supposedly shows up in a powered boat.
Yeah, we talked about that. Was it Sacred Mushroom? Our Sacred Mushroom Ritual episode. We had an author on, Tom Lane, who wrote a book about his experiences going down to Mexico and South America and partaking in sacred mushroom rituals with like Maria Sabina, who's like a famous curandera.
Yeah, he actually preferred these mushrooms over the ayahuasca. He said that this was the real deal here.
But his book is called
The Quest for Quetzalcoatl.
It's called Sacred Mushroom Rituals: The Search for the Blood of Quetzalcoatl. And when you do this specific mushroom ritual, you meet Quetzalcoatl, and it's like a million diamond serpent that comes, and there's a special way that you eat the mushrooms where they're still living and still in the little.
Yeah, you like suck on them with a wasp honey.
Yeah.
Wow.
And how the wasp honey like helps it activate, and I don't even think you like swallow it. Don't you just suck on it until you start tripping?
Yeah, I don't know exact. I forget the exact. It's on our, I think it's episode or part 3 that we did with him. But yeah,
he said you suck on it, and then you feel your spinal cord like turn into a snake, and then you lose yourself. It's pretty interesting though if you have the time. Check that bad boy out.
Yeah, but he's a wealth of knowledge with like Mesoamerican mythology and stuff too. So, but we were talking, and he didn't have heard of Viracocha and how that correlates to Kukulkan and all that stuff.
Yeah, Kukulkan, Quetzalcoatl. Yep.
But in Viracocha, doesn't that translate to foam of the sea? I believe.
Yes.
So.
Yep. But he's also associated with the serpent, and so was Ea/Enki of the Sumer, Akkadian, Babylonian civilization. He's constantly imaged and referred to as the serpent.
Right.
And I mean, the serpent is also in, like, if you want to get biblical Old Testament. There's serpent images, and I'm not talking about not just the Garden of Eden's classic serpent, but that is part of the story. Right, what was the serpent doing in the garden? Trying to give knowledge, right?
Well, yeah, that's the Gnostic.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
The Gnostic version. In the biblical version, he's evil.
Well,
but what is he doing in the biblical version?
Even in the evil biblical version,
that's
he's
true.
like the tree of knowledge.
That's true.
The tree of the fruit of knowledge, and he's saying, "Hey, take of the fruit of the tree of knowledge."
Right. He's like, "Hey, you don't have to be dumb."
So it's this weird dichotomy then that you have between Gnosticism, which you can look at like the Gnostic Gospels, and you could see that there's actually maybe even a little bit more truth in them than perhaps parts of the Bible. But I don't know. I've looked into Gnosticism pretty in depth and read the Gospels. Elaine Pagel's written more than a few books on the subject. That's some interesting stuff too. But yeah, I like the serpent idea, and it's a weird part of humanity.
Yeah, it is.
Also because of why are children afraid of pictures of snakes, and why is it so prevalent throughout ancient civilizations? Why is it still people have super crazy, phobias of it to this day? But then you also have these knowledge seekers and these people looking into esoteric things, and it's the completely opposite thing. It represents good and knowledge. Right. So it's
there's also the uraeus of the Egyptian, pharaonic headdress has the snake coming out of the forehead, symbolizing enlightenment. I mean, like, this is the symbol is replete throughout the ancient world, not being an evil thing, but symbolizing knowledge / understanding / enlightenment. There's the Kundalini. You were just talking about your spine turning into a snake. That sounds exactly like Kundalini awakenings. That's Hindu, more Eastern stuff. So so the other play on the words of the Brothers of the Serpent podcast versus the Brotherhood of the Serpent is that we are actually brothers. Right.
Okay.
So we
we're
grew
cousins.
up with we grew up with each other. Oh, great. All right. Keep it in the family. Yeah. So we grew up with each other talking about this stuff, and we haven't always talked about ancient mysteries, but we've always sort of had this kind of banter going back and forth between us about any interesting thing we discuss. And then when we started getting into the ancient mysteries, we started having these long, crazy conversations. The whole like solving the world's problems conversations. Except for it's in the middle of the night, going, "Were they fucking aliens making these things?" So
where's the tape recorder?
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So
what you're saying is you guys believe in reptilians.
Danger noodles.
Yes,
is what we call them.
We are danger noodles. And yes, we do shed skins on a monthly basis. So, you don't have to believe in reptilians when you are reptilians.
Right. Yeah. Shape shifting and
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's a pretty sweet story. It sounds somewhat similar to ours. Just being cousins, hanging out all the time, smoking a little herb, having some talks, and kind of ballooned into something bigger. So.
Exactly. That's great.
Yeah. When we first started, he didn't even want to do it. I kind of got him to do it. I had this notebook. I had this notebook of like all this. I had this notebook of all this research and notes that I had taken from books that I've read, and just connecting dots of certain things. And he goes, "Why don't we call it Maisie's Notebook?" And he was going to be like the young Jamie type, or I guess for you it would be like the Watcher or whatever, but maybe even present. And then we started doing. I'm like, no, just do it. And we started having these conversations, and it just kind of led to where this is now, where it is what it is. We play off of each other, but at the same time, I'm the one. I guess since we're talking about symbols, if you look at this, I designed our symbol, and
you guys are clearly Illuminati. Talking about it. You're talking about us.
That's what my roommate thinks.
but so obviously the all-seeing eye of God, but I mean if you look at our logo, it's completely split in half. It's duality. We have night and day, and I'm the one searching for the light, and he's the one in the darkness that I'm going to show the light to. And sometimes I get crazy with stuff, and he's going to show me the light, so that kind of a symbolism is what we were going for, or at least I was going for.
It's pretty funny. A lot of these symbols have been just beaten up and made so evil. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Like the black cat. I think that was actually like a sign of good luck back in the day, and then all that witching stuff. It's interesting. Especially in America, it's pretty interesting, but
yeah, it is weird how the meanings of the symbols can change over time, or the way people interpret them. I guess not necessarily the original meaning, but they like the serpent, right? We were just talking about that. It's like when you're growing up, you're always looking at this symbol as like, especially if you're raised Christian, it's like, oh, that's evil, it's bad or whatever. But there is something strange about snakes too. So they're interesting. You're kind of like, whoa, you want to like check it out, but you also want to stay away from it.
We used to catch snakes.
We used to love them as kids.
Yeah, we used to catch them all the time.
Yeah, we
caught snakes too. Yeah,
but it's very similar to knowledge, right? If you get it, you have to be very careful, and you can never really tame them. They will always leave. If you know what I'm saying, they're going to choose to go.
Look at boas and all those. Those things will kill your dog and your babies if you let them out of the cage. But they might have fun sitting on your arm or something, and they won't do anything. But then you don't know what they're going to do sneaking out in the middle of the night. So.
Snakes are never having fun unless they're killing something and eating it.
Right. Well, I mean, I'm pretty sure boas just look at people as like, they're warm. It's like
squishy.
Well, it's like you are a storage of meat that is also warm.
Yeah.
Right. You are a future meal that right now is keeping me hot.
Yeah.
That's what they.
But the point is,
and only we would take them as pets. That's the thing.
We got to show our dominance,
The point is that you can kind of see the interesting, like the correlation there with knowledge. Knowledge is a similar thing. Like if you're going to seek it and then you gain it, it's powerful. It can kill you.
Yep.
It can harm people, or dangerous. You can use it to. You see what I'm saying? Like, it depends on what you choose to do with it.
Yeah, with care for sure. Yeah.
I think the path of enlightenment's somewhat depressing, to be honest with you. At least from my. No, I'm being honest. At least from my point of view.
That's pretty dark, bro.
Yeah, no, I mean, but what I mean by that is that the more you know, the less mystical or, I don't know, magical things that are out there, if you're really looking. And when we talked about this last episode, I think that there is this true gap or true fringe of weirdness and weird things and mysteries and ancient mysteries and consciousness-based mysteries and all sorts of mysteries, but the window is a lot smaller than I thought it was when we first started, if that makes sense. So from reading all these books, talking to all these experts, talking to different people, yeah, we've had some people that I don't agree with on or don't buy into what they're saying, but at the same time, we've met enough people and stuff that I feel like there is this true fringe or this true gray area that exists in reality and exists in consciousness. It's just a lot more narrow than I would have thought. So it's kind of depressing in a way. And I don't mean like, oh, poor me. It's just the more you know. You said it's a powerful thing, and it is a powerful thing in the sense that you have to kind of keep putting it into perspective, because if you don't, it kind of gets away from you, and you're kind of like, oh, well, what am I even doing this for? So.
That's interesting. So my experience has been like I feel like I should talk about like what originally happened before I really started deep diving into the mysteries. Is that I thought everything seemed sort of dull then, because I thought that science had basically figured all this stuff out, and the Standard Model had it all written into a big manual. And it was just accepting the ideas that the Standard Model science education sort of puts out there, like, hey, this is the way the world is.
Right, and it's
then
not.
if you start deep diving into it, you have to like really destroy a bunch of your own paradigms, and that opens up the possibilities. That there really are mysteries, that there really is something, mysterious about the universe, and in so many fields of science and in so many areas of research, there's just so many unanswered questions, and the more you dive into it, you realize, like, oh my god, this question leads to another question, which leads to another. So I kind of had that's sort of what happened to me, and it made the universe more fascinating, but at the same time I also struggled with somewhat of a depressing aspect of it, which was like, wow, everything that I thought I knew is wrong.
Yeah. No, it's an interesting perspective. Actually, now that you say that, I can put my finger on it. So I guess what I was trying to say is that you're right. I agree with you 100%. Same thing. Went to high school, went to college for a little bit. I didn't graduate college, but going through that process, I didn't really care at that time. And then as I got older, I like wanted to know more things, so I started doing this personal knowledge quest and just going crazy on books and research and videos and all sorts of different stuff. And what it is that I feel like humans don't know as much as we think we know, and that by looking at the mind, studying the mind, reading all the research, reading all the consciousness stuff, that a lot of this is illusion, and there is mysteries out there, and we don't know nearly as much as we think we do. But that's kind of depressing to me, that there's not somebody out there that has the answers, or there's not somebody out there that really knows what the hell is going on. So I guess that's the aspect that I'm trying to talk about, is that I wish that there were this secret organization or group that you could join and just get not all the answers, but have a better grasp on things.
There is, man. We're using the symbol for them.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So...
that's why we're talking to you guys. You guys aren't that group?
Yeah.
Let's get out of here. Podcast is over.
Yeah.
No, but that makes more sense to me for sure. I get that. And Russ is one of these people who's like, he loves to find questions. And he's like, look at this. This is unexplainable. All right, okay, moving on. Looking at another one. This is totally unexplainable.
Yeah.
And I'm the type of person that's like, wait a minute. I want to stop and like work on this puzzle for a while and try to find a solution.
Right.
So that, like, I have this urge to do that, to really just like, I'm going to figure it out.
Yeah. He wants to take it apart and figure out how it works, and then put it back together, and it doesn't work anymore.
So in that sense, like I'm kind of like you, where I want to find, well, is there some body of knowledge, or is there a group of people, or have there been people in the past who have claimed to figured something out, like Tesla, for example. I love looking into Tesla's research and taking his ideas and trying to compare them to the standard model of physics and whatnot, and see, like, is the stuff he's talking about real? Did he perhaps discover, something amazing, or many amazing things in terms of physics that I could possibly tap into and figure out myself? Right. That would be awesome. So I am also looking for those answers. But I think the thing that impacted me the most was that I had accepted the standard model basically saying, no, all of that stuff's impossible. Mm-hmm. And so when I realized that there were so many unanswered questions, and especially in terms of physics and science, that opened up the possibilities where I had thought all those doors were closed. So it made the pursuit of these mysteries more interesting, rather than just like a fool's errand, because it's total BS. There's no reason to even look into it.
I also think that this is going to sound a little, I don't know what the word is, but basically the answer is that you need to be able to ask questions. That is the answer. In other words, the path to follow is the path of questions. Right, and so like the first step, like Kyle's talking about, is getting rid of the idea that there are answers that can be gained. And once you've done that, that is, in a paradoxical way, the answer. Because once you have realized that answers aren't what you're going for, really, what you're going for are the right questions, then suddenly all these paths open up, and you can approach answers that there isn't ever really an answer to stuff. Mm-hmm. So but by asking all the correct questions, or learning that there's a way to do that, or to narrow down questions until you're asking the right ones, or the best ones. Maybe not right. Maybe right is the wrong way to say it, but better questions. So you're working your way down a path of questions constantly, and each one of those questions leads you to information that leads to more questions, right? Mm-hmm. And that is the answer to that does show you, like, almost immediately, that everything has much more meaning than it seems to have.
Sure.
And also what you were saying, that a lot of stuff is illusion, including the idea that we pretty much got the universe figured out. We just need to fill in the details.
Right.
That's a huge illusion. It's completely false. So, like, I like to jokingly say that, like, the only people who think that they understand stuff are people that know absolutely nothing about it, right? Because the more you learn about something, the more you understand. We don't know anything about this yet.
Exactly. So, that's it right there.
That's why Plato thought the only person worthy of being king was Socrates, because he knew what he didn't know.
Right. That's right. The wise man that he knows nothing.
Yeah. That's interesting. And we talked a little bit about this last episode, too, when we were talking about lucid dreams. But I think when you look at language and you look at writing, those two things are basically creating reality, or creating consciousness, because once you start memorizing those things, you're building this whole world. And even science is just a built up scaffolding of this thing that we're all participating in, but we're giving purpose to something that didn't even exist before us, if that makes sense. So to say that's objective truth, to me, is false, because there's no way that could be objective truth. We created it. Right. We're this observer, if you will, and we don't know anything else for sure. Maybe something created us, maybe not. Maybe there was just some sort of Big Bang thing that happened, which is the academic model, and that gets, as you mentioned, there's different versions of that. There's the Big Bounce. There's all sorts of the multiverse theory. So you can go on and on and on with all that. But it's this weird thing I think about lately, where just language and communication with other people is what's building. It's almost like The Sims. You see, if you're a character in The Sims, and once you start talking to somebody, it builds that into the game, and then more people get added, and then more people get added, and pretty soon it's this collective thing. So I'm not a big simulation guy either. I can be convinced if there's more compelling argument or a more compelling theory or argument or something having to do with that, or evidence, but that's just my thought on it. I've just been looking into ancient philosophy and ancient religions and stuff. It just seems like a lot of this stuff is just our creation, which is great. I think it's awesome, and we're obviously inspired by something, but I think we know far less than we think we do, and I think that sometimes I think we're just spinning our own wheels, but that's just my opinion. I try to stay away from that type of thinking because it's kind of toxic, but
and maybe there are things that we might never know. That's the bottom line.
Well, I've come to grips with that.
That is
it's hard to come to grips with.
That is a bottom line for sure. The acceptance of perpetual mystery is a big part of this. Which is why I had to look, like when I started diving into a lot of this stuff, I was looking for answers too. And I went down all kinds of different rabbit holes that a lot of people go down the same path. But eventually what I learned was that what's more interesting, because there are never answers. You follow some rabbit hole and instead of having an end with a sign that says answer A for this rabbit hole is blah, 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 blah. Instead, it either vanishes into a weird forest of no rabbit hole. Like suddenly you're in a forest and you're just lost amongst the trees and you don't even know where the path is, or it turns into a million little rabbit holes that you could never follow. Right. And that's when I started to learn the value of the question rather than than looking for answers. And so I started looking for questions, because looking for questions is opening up the possibility, basically.
I like that.
Yeah. Like let's look for better questions, and having a question about something acknowledges that there is a mystery there. And that a lot of times is the first battle that you have with people you talk to about this kind of stuff. They're like, oh, they know how they built the pyramids. You're like, no, they freaking don't.
What's your guys?
Well, here's a question for you. Do you guys have a favorite ancient structure?
Oh, wow.
I know it's tough, but there's got to be something that either popped up or was the first one.
It's a real Maury special right there, folks. You heard it first.
Stumped. Podcast over. Bam.
I know it's like saying, what's your favorite movie, but there's always something that pops up to your mind, or something that has
what's your favorite color?
Impact on you.
But I think I've answered this question before, actually, and I can't remember what it was. I think they change over time. The song,
right.
For a long time, it was the Great Pyramid, because I was in that rabbit hole of like looking at all of the interesting math that was involved in the geometry, all of the interesting aspects of the interior, and what would be the purpose of this thing. It's just an endless mystery. And now even with the muon scans and stuff that they're doing, the Scan Pyramids project, they just had a story where they've confirmed that additional chamber that they thought they found with the first muon scan. So
it's now been confirmed in multiple ways.
Yes, now it's been confirmed in multiple ways. There is another chamber,
and it's bigger than they thought.
And it's above the Grand Gallery, and it extends out towards the main entrance to the descending passage on the exterior of the pyramid, slightly above that. And that is just, once again, it's like, here we go. Badass. This thing is going to be revealing even more secrets. So that is probably like one of my all-time favorite ancient structures, but. The stuff we had talked about before, Baalbek is, it's almost like Baalbek is more interesting because of the quarry.
Right.
And just the fact that this, the trilithon stones over there at Baalbek, came from that quarry. It's that whole group of thing. It's not so much like, wow, this structure is amazing. It's in that scenario, that's a favorite because of the seemingly impossible nature of how to get those stones over there without a road or without any infrastructure.
Do you think the Romans built that or no?
Not the Trilithon.
They built
the Temple of Jupiter, for sure.
What's fascinating about Baalbek is the platform, not all the stuff that's built on top of the platform.
Yeah.
Right.
Even though that stuff is also interesting, Jupiter is enormous.
And if you look at the platform from Google Earth, it kind of looks a lot like the Temple of Man.
Yeah, it's a guy holding something.
It looks like he's holding a man bag.
So who do you think built it then?
Or a beer mug or something. No idea.
And what's also interesting is that thing that he's holding, like you said, beer mug or man bag or whatever. That's where
we call those ancient. We call those ancient handbags.
Yeah, that's where the Temple of Bacchus is, and Bacchus is the god of wine. So it's telling you something, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they built Bacchus on top of the man bag, right? So it's like water of life. It's something's going on there. Spirits, I don't know. It's an interesting. Yeah.
So I think I kind of agree with Graham Hancock's take on it that the original, like that these structures that we see, that we can definitely say the Romans built these structures. They were just like in so many other ancient structures, newer, more recent cultures came along, found these ancient foundations or some ancient structure or ancient work there, and they built on top of it. They revered it. They may have tried to restore it as much as they could, clean it off, whatever, and build there. Like, I think I mean, to me, it seems pretty obvious, but of course, I'm not a scholar of all of that work. It's just the arguments that I've looked at, and especially the ones that Graham lays out, seem pretty obvious that the Romans found that area and then went and built on it. And if you look back at like the Epic of Gilgamesh, they talk about going to that area. Yep. In the land of the cedars or whatever, which is in the same area as Baalbek, where Humbaba was, the guardian of the city of the gods or whatever, that they had to go fight and all this. I mean, that's like ridiculously ancient. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that Humbaba was there guarding the buried structures of the
right. And so when Gilgamesh
or whatever,
when Gilgamesh and Enkidu are making their, like, after I can't remember if it was before or after they killed Humbaba. I think it was after.
Yeah.
They start digging up all the cedars by the roots and pulling them up, and they start uncovering these ancient structures under there with massive stones and clearly ancient giants were buried there and stuff. You're just like, yeah, okay, Baalbek.
Yeah, it's Baalbek. That's pretty much.
Yeah,
and there's another platform, but the Temple Mount is also a platform, just like Baalbek, has enormous blocks down in the base of it. It's seems like it was built by the same people, whoever they were, a long, long time ago, and it's been built on top of ever since. Just like the Temple Mount has structures that have been built on it for thousands of years. It's
What about the Parthenon? I mean, isn't that in Greece?
Yes, and the Parthenon and the Colosseum, they all are also built on top of older things.
But I think the Parthenon specifically has a crazy large foundation block too that's similar to Baalbek in size, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and there are also like enormous multi-level sets of catacombs and tunnels and things underneath those structures that some of them are older than. It's hard to tell when very sophisticated later cultures have occupied the spot. It's almost impossible to tell what was done when and where, why, and who.
Yeah.
Well, we do it to this day. Somebody's buys a ranch, and hey, let's put an addition on, or let's rebuild the house. So
or look at the urban and exploration people that do stuff in London or in Paris. They go down into the sewer systems, the modern sewer systems, and then they end up in older sewer systems, and then they find like an entire Victorian theater down there.
Yeah, that's crazy.
A movie theater that was lost, right? How do you lose a freaking theater? And then they keep going, and they get into older tunnels, and these are now like medieval period, and they get older ones, and now they're looking at Roman stuff. It's like, okay, it's the same thing with our cities now, just like you said. Right. So, but going back to the favorite structure question. I am fascinated with Gunung Padang in Indonesia, and that's because it's still a giant mystery. They did those tests, and they got dates that were like 25 to 30,000 years old, and then all work stopped. The archaeologists came in and were like, no, and got the government to shut it down, and it's been in limbo ever since. And I'm just like,
yeah, I think that one's definitely a mystery. I think though that one could go either way. I think that one's like. Obviously there's stuff that people did there, but is the whole thing this giant pyramid? I don't know. I would have to see.
Yeah, it's not a pyramid. That's
or a structure. Yeah,
it's a structure. Yeah, I'm
same thing with those Bosnian pyramids, right?
Yeah, well, okay. The Bosnian pyramids, I have a harder time with. I think that what we're looking at there is probably like human modification of existing.
That's what I was going to say, is that in many cases, like even the Great Pyramid of Egypt is not all built.
Yeah.
I mean, they dug the passages down below the base level of the pyramid, and so it's like there was an original sort of
primeval mound
there that they built it over, and then the Sphinx is the same way. There's the yardang sticking out of the ground that they carved, and then they dug out the Sphinx. So it's sort of a combination of building and modifying natural features.
Right. Yeah, so it's, in one way you could look at the Sphinx and say, well, that's just natural stone formation, right? Well, it's just been modified. No one stacked any blocks up to make the Sphinx.
Well, right, but they quarried around the Sphinx to build the Sphinx temple with those blocks, and that's why.
Yes, 100%.
And that's where you see that water erosion, which is the big, topic of debate when you talk about the Sphinx, is how old is the Sphinx, and you got the people that say it's 5,000 years old. Then you have the people that say, oh no, it's way older than that. It's 10,500. And then you've got the people, John Anthony West, it could be 30,000 years old. Right. So with that, I tend to agree that it's probably older than thought, but who knows? And then you got to look at the layers of shoal and how that plays into that. I don't, if you look at like the geology, because I've gotten a couple fights with people on Reddit, and they'll send me a bunch of shit to read. So then I'm reading like all this academic stuff on top of all the alternative stuff, on top of all the mainstream stuff. So it's
been there.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff on it. That's for sure.
Yeah. The thing that I like to point out about the Sphinx dating is that just taking Robert Schoch's work on the Sphinx, as a pretty decent authority on geological erosion,
specifically soft rock erosion.
Right.
Yeah.
He says, John Anthony West has said that he's put the most quote unquote conservative dating on it, and it's he's thinking it's going to be older than the pyramid, perhaps 12,000 years old. But typically in geology, a conservative date for erosion or natural stone is older.
The long one.
Yeah, so a conservative date would be further back than, so if they try to say, well, this is much younger, that would be the opposite of a conservative.
Right. That would make.
You're talking about conservative in terms of academic thought as opposed to conservative of the way geology works.
That's what I'm talking about.
Those are both academic thought, right?
The academic thought in geology is that these things take extremely long periods of time. So a conservative date on an age of erosional features would be the older date.
Right. No, but what I meant was conservative in the sense of trying to appease the people that write the books, is what I meant.
You can't rewrite the
standard model,
right?
But not the standard model of geology. That's what I'm trying to say. It's conservative for the archaeology, but not conservative for the geology.
Right.
Which is weird, right? So it kind of tells you, it's like, okay, well, he's not wanting to make too many waves, but he's willing to go out on a limb and upset the archaeologists.
I find that fascinating. And I find it fascinating that there's so many of these people, these academics, that, let's say they're anthropologists or archaeologists. A lot of those people just have art history backgrounds. They don't have geology backgrounds. So we're going to have these people study pyramids and stone and stonework and different things. Why wouldn't you have a mason, or why wouldn't you have somebody that's familiar with those processes?
Engineers, masons, geologists,
architects,
physicists.
Yeah, mathematicians. Yeah, but I agree with that they're not specialized in that, and they're very. And I guess this is true in most academic fields, but they're very jealous of their particular bailiwick. They don't want you coming in. They get really mad if someone from an outside discipline comes in and says, "Well, based on my discipline, everything you said about this is completely wrong," and now I have all this hard evidence about that. They don't like that.
Right.
They don't like that. And so if, like Kyle was saying, it's interesting that they say Schoch took a conservative date for the Sphinx, but it's not. In terms of geology, that is incredibly controversial to claim that erosion happened that fast on limestone. So it's controversial on both ends. It's weird.
That's what I was saying. He sort of picked a happy medium. So you could say that it's more likely that it's older.
Yeah.
In that, looking at it that way is my point.
Right.
It's more likely that it's older than his conservative date of 12,000-ish, roughly around 12,000 years old.
How old do you think it is?
Oh, I have no idea. I definitely think it's very old. I just don't think I'm not a geologist, so I don't know, but we are surrounded by limestone where we live here, right?
Well, I'll make it. I'll just say so. I think it's going to line up with the heliacal rising of Leo on the spring equinox.
Which one?
It'll be 12,000 years old, or